Michael Baker from Custom Bike Fit is on a mission to help 1 million athletes feel more comfortable on their bikes. As a triathlete himself and with more than 10 years of experience working with triathletes, he totally gets it and kindly shares lots of practical and zero-cost tips with us to get you riding faster with less pain. Tick and tick. What I love about Michael is he's just developed a new course called Bike Fit Yourself, which is really, really cool. So no matter where you are in the world, you can get his help with your position on your bike. And I've asked him to get really practical with us today, but also share with you this course because as a world first, you can get really quality advice no matter where you live. Already an absolute bargain at $99 Australian for his introductory offer. There is a code in the show notes to get an additional 15% off through September for our listeners. Now, I get absolutely no kickbacks for this. There's no commission. I really just want to share an awesome dude doing awesome things with you so that you don't make the same mistakes I did when I bought my first bike and spent years trying to get comfortable on the damn thing. I mean, who doesn't want to go faster on their bike and be more comfortable doing it? So even if you have had a bike fit and you feel completely at ease on your bike for 6, 7, 8+ hours, I guarantee you're going to pick up some tips from Michael because he's been in the industry for so long and he's across all of the products out there, including all the new and wonderful things that keep hitting the market. No matter who you are, I guarantee you're going to get at least one tip out of this today. Welcome to the Triathlon Nutrition Academy podcast, the show designed to serve you up evidence-based sports nutrition advice from the experts. Hi, I'm your host, Taryn, accredited practicing dietitian, advanced sports dietitian, and founder of Dietitian Approved. Listen as I break down the latest evidence to give you practical, easy-to-digest strategies to train hard, recover faster, and perform at your best. You have so much potential, and I want to help you unlock that with the power of nutrition. Let's get into it. Introducing you to Michael Baker from Custom Bike Fit, who is allowing me kindly today to let us pick his brain all about getting your bike set up properly for triathlon and making sure you don't waste money when you upgrade your bike. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Taryn. Thanks for the opportunity to be on the podcast with you.
So good. So you have done more than 10,000 hours of bike fitting. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah. I started my business Custom Bike Fit in 2012. And I just ran some numbers recently because I've created a new product and I calculated that, about 10,000 hours or just over 10,000 hours of bike fitting. So a fair bit.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a lot of time doing and like crafting your skill.
Yeah, it's something that I love. So it hasn't been difficult to do. To accrue those hours has actually been a pleasure. And seeing some of the outcomes and working with people from all walks of life trying to achieve their goals, it's been awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I love my job too. I haven't worked a day in the last sort of 15 years because it's not really work when you love what you do.
No.
So we have a lot to talk about today, and I feel like we could talk for hours about this sort of stuff, but because there are so many mistakes triathletes make when they do buy a bike. I certainly made them when I bought my first bike. But what are some of the things that we need to look for when you are buying a bike to make sure it actually fits you properly in the first place?
Yeah, that's a tricky one because ideally the bike fit should come before the bike purchase. Now, that's a lot of the service that I provide in my one-on-one fitting is people will come in for some advice on what to buy. Even if you have a bike though, getting a bike fit, whether that's in person or virtually or another way, you can gather a lot of data from your fit, which will then help you to procure the right equipment moving forward. So wherever you are right now, whatever stage you're at, whatever bike you have, that can help you to the next step. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think that's really important because I bought a bike from a bike shop and they, fit you And then
Yeah.
you realize that you're bloody uncomfortable, and you take
Yeah.
it to a professional like you that does this for a living, and they're like, well, your stem's too short or your cranks are too long. All those sorts of things that you have no idea about. You're just guided by the bike shop.
Yeah. And that is the thing. Most bike shops, and even if you go, and a lot of people trawl online now, they go shopping for bikes themselves or do some research. It's all based upon your height. So if you're a certain height, you fit a certain bike size. And it's so much more than that. The frame size is actually just one component. I would like to see moving forward a situation where a prospective buyer would go and see a fitter. They would get, okay, here's some recommendations on frame size, and they will differ between manufacturer. So here's the correct frame size from manufacturer A. Here's the size from manufacturer B. This is the ideal crank length. This is the ideal handlebar or base bar width. These are the aero bars that you need. And you stick it all in a configurator, and it spits out a build and a price for you. And it's your bike rather than the bike that's supposed to fit 25% of the population. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, so we need some cool AI technology to help us there, you reckon?
But I think that's a step forward. Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. So do you think the investment in getting a bike fit before you buy a bike is hands down worth it, so that you're not wasting 20 grand on something that doesn't fit you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Getting some good understanding of what your requirements are. So through the bike fit process, again, you understand what the benefits of the cranks are, what the crank actually does to your cycling motion. Having your hands close to you, how does that feel? What does that impact upon you? Having them further away, we're talking about stem length or frame length, that sort of thing. Getting into a sustainable, comfortable position. So, yeah, look, getting a pre-fit can save you literally thousands of dollars.
I wish I had done that in the first place, and I spent so much more money after buying a bike trying to get
Yeah.
it to fit me properly. And in the end, I gave up and ended up buying a completely different bike and, investing more money in that too. So I love the getting some help beforehand to make sure you've got something right in the first place. Because you're right, if it's only going to fit 25% of the population, there's no one size fits all with nutrition, and there's no one size fits all with a bike either.
No, absolutely.
So what are some of the things that you need to look out for specifically when you're buying a bike to make sure it fits your body?
Well, I think, again, you need to start with some sort of metrics as to what your current fit is and whether you're comfortable on your current bike. So you absolutely need to know what your saddle height is and what your optimal saddle height is. That's not always an exact number. There's often a little bit of play. My saddle height, for example, might be 760 mil to 765, 768 millimeters.
Yep.
But having an idea of what that ideal saddle height is important. Simply, you can walk into a bike shop. Let's say, for example, that you fit in the parameters of a 52 centimeter frame and your saddle height's 730 mil. You pop the saddle up to 730 mil and you have a look at it. Do you know what I mean?
Ridiculous.
It's often that simple. Can I get it? Look at the front. Can I now adjust the front of that bike? So this is another thing that I think people should be looking for is adjustability in bikes. Okay. Look at the seat post. Look at how the saddle's been positioned on the seat post. Can it move backwards? Can it move forwards? Obviously, we can move our saddle up and down within certain parameters, but we also want to move it back and forth. And then looking at the front of the bike, can the handlebars or the aero bars be raised? In a triathlon term, that's the base bar. What you'll see with a lot of bikes these days is that base bar is fixed. I cannot move it. Now, that can become an issue. The idea with the engineers that put these bikes together is that you're going to be in a time trial position for the duration of your event. Well, maybe they're missing a major component, which is your training. Oftentimes, riders are going to be sitting with their hands on the handlebars or on the base bar. How low is that? Does that mean that I cannot now see up the road comfortably? So these are the sort of things. Adjustability is key, the ability to move those bars up and down, and then the ability to move the pads. So that's the second place. So I've got my base bar position where I'm going to be sitting when my hands are near the brakes. And then where do I need to be sitting when I'm in a time trial position? And obviously that's generally going to be raised a little bit more. So adjustability at the back of the bike, adjustability at the front of the bike. If we're talking about cranks, shorter is better. There's no real penalty for going with a short crank.
And why is that?
Well, long cranks can cause a whole host of problems. The first one when you get into a time trial position is that you close your hip angle off. And that means that your knee is coming up closer to your chest.
Yep.
If that's too closed, we cannot generate power. If we go to a shorter crank, we can pop the seat up to make up for that difference in length, and it opens up the hip angle. A shorter crank is also easier to turn over. Okay, so through the pedal stroke, people feel a lot freer. There's less flexion through the knee, so a lot of people will experience knee pain. That can be due to crank length. And what I also find, once you open up that hip angle with the shorter crank that's easier to turn over, is that people run better off the bike. And we've got to take into consideration with triathlon that before you get on the bike, you're going to swim. And once you dismount, you're going to run. It's a particular type of fit. It's different to a time trial fit, a triathlon fit, because we've got to consider the other disciplines in the sport.
Yeah, I think that's really important because you do specifically fits for triathletes, and it's not a fit for a cyclist who would ride completely different to somebody that does, like, you don't have to run off the bike. So that's really good info. What is a short crank length? Like, what is the definition of short?
Yeah. The standard crank lengths, if you walk into a bike shop and they've got a range of bikes on display, you'll generally find the smallest bike will have a 165 millimeter crank. In the female, this extra small female bikes, you might find a 160. But typically the crank lengths are 165, 170, 172.5, and 175. Short cranks, in my mind and in my experience, are 165, 160, 155, 150.
Oh my goodness.
And I know athletes that go even shorter.
Yeah.
To a 145. And we're talking now guys that are 5'10", that are running 145 cranks. And all they do is they change their chain rings. They put on, a 54 or 56 front chain ring so they don't lose that leverage, that power. And they can get into a really comfortable aerodynamic position and run extremely well off the bike. If I was to prescribe a crank length for everyone and say to the manufacturers, just make these, I'd probably say 165. Right?
Okay.
It's going to cover a vast majority of triathletes, but I have no issue going shorter. They're just harder to get hold of.
There you go. So the majority of people are going to have to invest in a different crank length if they're looking to really dial in their position on the bike.
Yeah. In some instances, it's a nice to have. If it's a critical, for example, if you're in for a fit with me and I see issues, I see you rocking on the bike, and it's not because the saddle's too high, it's not because the saddle's too low. We can clearly determine that it's crank length and it's impacting your performance. It's having a negative impact. I'll tell you. If a longer crank isn't causing you any issues, any downside, I'll again let you know that, okay, maybe we should look to change the cranks down the track, right? But it's not a critical. We don't need to spend $400 on that right now. We can spend that money down the track. But it's nice to have that information so that when, okay, maybe a set of secondhand cranks come available, I'll purchase those. I've got some additional funds. Or I'm going to buy my next bike. Now I can have that conversation with the bike shop. This bike comes with a 172.5 crank. I'd like a 165. I'm holding the dollars. What will you do for me?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, if they want the sale, they'll change them. It's a nil cost. Or maybe it's an uplift. We'll take the 172.5s back. We'll give you a trade-in on those it's an extra this.
Yeah.
It's just nice to know and to be able to then accurately budget. What is my new bike going to cost me? So Bike Fit for me it's not a one-stop shop, if that makes sense. My role is to get you from where you are. It's a bit like your role, I'm sure. Get you from where you are to where you want to be. We might not do that in one sitting. It
Definitely
might take
not.
a little bit of, it's going to take a little bit of time. For me, it's Michael, do your best.
Yeah.
Do the best with what you have right now. Empower the client, educate the client. How do we get them closer to where they need to be? And this is something that, different products become available over time. Some, little bespoke manufacturers pop out of the woodwork and they start creating products specifically for triathletes to help them with their position. I'm seeing a lot of this these days. So the products that I have available to me today weren't around 4 or 5 years ago. So now those guys, we can move you that little bit that next step along. It's an evolution.
When I bought my bike, I struggled for years to try and get comfortable in my seat. I wish I had met you before that process. But do you have any tips around how to buy a bike and have your saddle comfortable, or what to do to make sure that you are comfortable on your saddle as quickly as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a common issue, all right? Saddles causing pain. And
Particularly being a chick.
yeah, ladies more so than guys. It can be more challenging for ladies, absolutely. All right. But guys have similar problems, and it's an issue for all cyclists, for all triathletes. And what I would say is you could be on the ideal saddle, but if it's set at the wrong height, if it's pushed too far forward, or if it's set too far back, or you have the angle of the saddle wrong, so you've got it aggressively pushed down, or maybe even tilted up, it is not going to be comfortable. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that your saddle is level. You can film yourself and look at your leg extension, right, to set your saddle at the appropriate height. But if you're in any doubt as to which, and saddles become a bit of a minefield, and I see people come in, I've had clients come in with boxes literally full of saddles.
Yeah.
And the right one is in there. There's 2 or 3, in fact, that are in that box that are right for the client. They just haven't set them up properly.
Yeah.
They've jammed a time trial saddle all the way forward, or it's sitting way too high, or it's sitting way too low. Again, you want to be able to sit on your saddle and feel stable. Right, Kona every year, they count all the bikes, they count all the aero bars, they count all the wheels, and they count all the saddles. So I think it's called it's now Triathlete magazine. And you go in there, you go online and just do a Google search, the Kona bike count. And as you go down, it will then give you the saddle count. And I love this saying, success leaves clues. Look at the top 6 saddles in Kona. They are the saddles that are ideal for triathletes. And they're things like the ISM seats. So ISM, all they do is make saddles. Bontrager make a great time trial saddle. Specialized make a great time trial saddle. There's a few in there. And that's the thing, people go and buy saddles, they waste a lot of money. Look on the secondhand market as well. You will find people that have those saddles, they just haven't set them up correctly, and they're selling them at a fraction of what they're worth.
Yeah, that's a great tip. What are some other things that we can do ourselves, maybe at home, to make sure we're more comfortable on our bike?
One of the most common issues I see is foot pain. So we call it
that was
foot.
me. That was me.
Okay. Numb toes and burning feet. And 9 times out of 10, it's a very simple fix. It's that your cleats are positioned too far forward. So if you're riding on your toes, eventually they're going to go numb, they're going to go to sleep. So we move the cleat back. We move the cleat into a more midfoot position. That has a number of effects. Number one, it's more comfortable. And that's the first thing people say to me, wow, that feels really good under my foot. Moving the cleat does adjust your leg extension. So the next thing you want to do after setting the cleats is set your saddle height. But just focusing on the feet, moving the cleat back makes it more comfortable. It's more powerful. Okay, if you were to crush on an aluminium can, stamp down on an aluminium can, you're going to use the middle of your foot. That's where the power is. The second thing is, if you're not riding on your toes, and the listeners can do this right now, point your toes down, your calf activates, flexion. In a long course triathlon, there's a fair chance you're going to start cramping if your toes are pointed down for 90, for 180 kilometers. So leveling that foot out by bringing the cleat back negates that. It reserves some of that lower limb, and you will typically not cramp, and you will run better off the bike. So easy to do, move the cleats back. If you're having foot pain, just try it, move the cleats back.
Good tip. For me, I had 2 smaller shoes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the size of the shoe, the size of the toe box, where the cleats are positioned on the shoe. I mean, it is a bit of a minefield, but we're just looking at things that people can do that are 0 cost.
Yep, and do yourself at home. So do you recommend getting like an actual level on your bike and making sure that your saddle has got that little bubble in the right lines? Make sure it is legitimately level.
Yeah, look, you can do it. You can do it by sight. Once you
Maybe
have
you can, Michael, because you're a professional, but the rest of us punters.
a couple of degrees tilt isn't a problem. So an easy tip would be put the bike on the trainer. When you put a bike on the trainer, you want to make sure that the bike is level, right? You don't want the front wheel, you don't want the rear wheel elevated and the front wheel down. So if the bike is level and you sit up on your saddle, no hands, you should feel like you're supported, right?
Yeah.
If you're sliding off the front of the seat and you're having to throw yourself back, there's too much tilt on your saddle. You'll feel it, right?
That's a great tip.
What we typically find with time trial saddles, they do push you forward a little bit. And in setting that fore aft of the saddle, you want to be conscious of how much weight do I have on my hands? If you've got a lot of weight on your hands, the saddle needs to come back. That's part of the fitting process, is making sure people are comfortable when they're on the base bar or the handlebars, as well as in the time trial position. So that's where we set that fore aft of the saddle.
It's a really good practical tip, that one. Thank you.
That's all right.
How do we figure out if we've got our handlebars in the right spot?
Yeah, so handlebars is one thing. A lot of the bikes today, particularly with an integrated front end, you cannot move the handlebars or the base bar. People love that from an aesthetics point of view because the bikes look really good.
Yeah.
But it's not always practical. I am a big fan of bikes where we still have what's called steerer tube. So the steerer tube allows you to move the handlebars up and move them down. After we've set the cleats and we've set the saddle height, and then we start moving to the front of the bike, if we have the ability to, I like to set the height of the base bar or the handlebars, right? You can, if you need to, flip a stem over. So if you have a bike with a stem, they are generally, the orientation is minus or plus. So minus 6 degrees, plus 6 degrees. You can get a minus 17 degrees. It aggressively drops the bars. But if those bars are really low, you can flip that stem over, plus 17 degrees. It now moves that base bar, that handlebar up. And again, we want to be in a comfortable position on the base bar before we then get into our aero bars. With the aero bars, without going into too much detail, Michael's mantra is sit down, clip in, elbow to the pad, hand to the end of the extension, rest. Not forearm on the pad, grip the middle of the TT extension and hold on for dear life, because any tension that you create through the hands, through the forearms, makes its way up to the neck and shoulders, and you will take that with you on the run. So we want to be as relaxed as we possibly can. And if the elbow is positioned on the pad, and preferably the hand is higher than the elbow, you can relax because you're locked in on the pad. You've got good skeletal support and your legs are doing the work.
I'm loving this. This is so good. This is everything that every triathlete wanted to hear ever. Got any more gold nuggets for us or Michael's mantras we can help people with?
I think the next one would be, and it's to do with the front of the bike, is always make sure that you can see up the road, whether your hands are on the handlebars.
Good tip.
On the base. Well, you'd be surprised how many people, it's either because they're pushed too far forward or the handlebars or the base bar are too low. What happens then is it becomes really difficult after a while to lift your neck.
Yeah.
Because you have this hunch going on, right? And generally, it's because you're too far forward or the bars are too low, or it's a combination of the two. Now, not only is that uncomfortable, it's a safety issue. And this is the conversation I'm often having with people. Imagine you're training for an Ironman, so your ride on the weekend is 5-6 hours. Most of us live in built-up areas. So we've been out maybe in the hinterland. I don't know where you've been riding, but we're tired. And at the time, we really need to be aware of what's going on. We're already fatigued. And now I've got my hands near the brake levers and I'm having difficulty lifting my head because I've got neck pain. That's dangerous. That's very dangerous. If you live in a build-up area and it's now 10, 11, say it's 10 o'clock and mums and dads are taking their kids to school sport, they're looking for car parks. It's just the worst time. Do you know what I'm saying? So always make sure that you're able to see up the road, whether you're in that upright position or whether you're in a time trial position. It's super important. You do not want to be having neck pain because you'll be dropping your head.
Yeah, isn't that crazy to think that there's people that can't actually see forwards in their bike after an extended period of time? I didn't know that.
Yeah, look, I mean, some people it's like, I can only hold this position for 5 minutes.
Oh man, you would
It's
see it
really,
all.
yeah, it's easy to fix. And this is where adjustability in a bike really comes in. So if you're looking to purchase that bike, look at the back end. Can I move the saddle back and forth? Look at the front end. How far forward can I move my pads, my base bar, you want adjustability. And then we don't have to have those problems.
That's great advice. I'm not sure we should open this can of worms, but what's your favorite hydration and nutrition setup for somebody on a bike? Do you have one?
Yeah.
Or is there particular products? We have to be careful because triathletes are really good at just like adding to cart quickly.
Yeah.
What sort of
Look,
things to think about when it comes to, purchasing a bike for those things, but also what you actually put onto it for carrying your nutrition and hydration?
yeah. My first recommendation is you should always, and this is regardless of the duration of your event, you should always carry a drink system at the front of the bike. Okay, it's where your head is, it's where your hands are. Far easier to access than anything that's on the frame. Right, that's almost a must. And you'll see a lot of the time trial bikes that are coming out today have a built-in hydration system at the front, and that's a great idea. Right, they're not always super easy to refill. That's something else you've got to consider. How easy is it for me to refill this? But certainly having a drink system at the front of the bike. My favorite was always just a standard drink bottle in the cage, which Profile Design makes some super little solutions for the front of the bike. Because once you put your extensions, and you'll notice today more and more people are bringing their hands up higher, they're tilting their extensions, and that's typically where your hydration system is going to sit. So it's called a BTA, between the arms system. If I turn a reservoir on an angle, I can never refill it completely.
True.
So, yeah, that can become an issue. Again, companies like Profile Design have thought of that. There's wedges that are now available to level that drink system off. So you can have your bars at an angle, but I digress. You should have a hydration system at the front of the bike, and then we want to go behind the seat, right?
Why is that?
So the fastest place to carry a bottle is between your arms because it's hidden from the wind.
Yep.
Second is behind you for the same reason.
Yeah.
Right? The slowest, we call the slowest places to carry bottles are on the frame. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but if we can, we keep the bottles off the frame. But those
even if they're those really thin aero ones that are no wider than your frame?
Yeah, no, they're a good idea, but two things. Number one, they're single use. With a standard bottle, you can throw it away. And what are they handing out on the course? Standard
He's a
bottles.
thinker. He's a thinker.
Yeah. With an aero bottle, number one, I've just paid $60, $80 for that bottle. I don't want to throw it away.
No.
Number two, do you think they're going to hand you back your elite chrono? No, you're never getting it. So it's a single use. So I like them for if I've got maybe nutrition in there, maybe I've got my gels in there, or I've got a super high concentrate liquid nutrition in there, or I've got a high concentrate of electrolytes. It's a hot day, something I'm sipping on every now and then. But otherwise, I want to carry my food, my nutrition in the bottle at the front, in the bottles that are behind me. And this is me personally, I want to carry everything I'm going to need for my event. Even to the point where, okay, if it's an Ironman, I've got 3 bottles on the bike and I will stop at special needs and I will take my next 3 bottles because I want to make sure that whatever I'm putting in my mouth agrees with me. I've trained on that. I don't want to rely upon the nutrition they're handing out on the course. Even if I can avoid it, the water. You're out in the middle of nowhere and there's a water tanker and attached to that a hose and someone's filling up water. I don't know how long that water's been in that tank. I don't know where it's come from. Right? And there's no guarantee, particularly if you're middle back of the pack, that they're actually going to have any hydration for you towards
That's bad,
the end
isn't
of
it?
it anyway.
Yeah.
So
They ran out of
what you can.
They ran out of water one year at Kona, which just blows my mind. But yeah, I'm with you. You need to be as self-sufficient as possible. I don't know so much about the water because remember, every bottle you carry is extra weight that we're trying to minimize on our frame.
Yeah, I think it really depends upon the course, right? And aerodynamics trumps weight. So yes, I agree with you on the weight, but we can also minimize the drag of those bottles by positioning them strategically, i.e. between the aero bars or behind us. Yeah, and I think you're right. It's course dependent.
Mm. What advice do you give for somebody that's new to cycling and is not comfortable grabbing those bottles from behind their saddle?
Yeah. So I think two things. Number one, you want to make sure that those bottles are sitting up nice and proud rather than at an aggressive angle. If they're at an aggressive angle, they're difficult to pull out and they're even harder to put back in.
Yeah.
If they're sitting right next to your butt and they're sitting up, they're very easy to access. That's number one. Number two, they are not bottles that you continually drink from. They are exchange bottles, i.e., I'm pulling a bottle from the rear to exchange my front bottle, or I'm using it to fill a reservoir at the front. If you're pulling and putting back in constantly and it's behind you, there's a fair chance you're going to lose it.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're out of aero more often than you need to be and all those sorts of things that'll slow you down.
Absolutely, yeah. What I used to do on race day, I used to carry, like in the 70.3, I'm carrying 3 bottles. And the bottles that are sitting behind me, I used to put a little gaffer tape, which is what the musos use. It's really sticky. It's like a cloth filament tape. It's really easy to tear. And I'd put my bottles in the cages and then put a strip of gaffer tape, attach a little bit to the cage, a little bit to the bottle. That bottle's going nowhere. But when I want it, I give it a good tug and it comes. And I never, ever lost a bottle on race day. And I raced for 30 years.
Yeah, that was my next question for you, because I hear of those bottles bouncing out all the time. So is there better products on the market now that don't bounce out, or do Michael's hot tip and tape it down for a second?
So number one, absolutely use the tape if you can. All right, use the tape. If the system's new and the cages are new, so sometimes you've got to replace the cages because they just get worn. Right? Profile Design make a really good rear hydration system called the RML. You can actually fit 3 cages on it, and the cages themselves have a rubber O-ring around them. They're really cheap. Like the replacement cages are like $15. So I'd be replacing those. If I was going to go and do a long course race, I'm buying 2 extra cages. Profile Design are always at the expos anywhere in the world. It's a bit of maintenance, it's a bit of housekeeping, but don't put them on an aggressive angle and don't keep pulling them.
Yeah, good tip. I love the practicalities. Like, I'm very much a practitioner and I love like getting down and dirty and all the things that are actually going to set people up for success on their bike. I love it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I love about you, like getting to pick your brain on all these things that you just do day in, day out, is that you've now created something that anyone can do in the world. You don't have to be physically on the Sunshine Coast to go and see you to do a bike fit. So can you run me through your new bike fit on yourself online course?
Well, the first thing is it's been 8 years in the making.
It's okay. The Triathlon Nutrition Academy is probably 10 years in the making, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, yeah, look, I mean, I've been fitting for 10 years and I set myself a ridiculous goal of helping 1 million people.
How are you going with that?
Well, I'm chipping away. And I realized very quickly, you're not going to do this working one-on-one exclusively with people.
Yeah.
And 9 years ago, I've created a remote fitting protocol. So I'm working with people remotely over video. It's not done live. I started doing it live, but they upload video. I look at it, tell them what to do. We go back and forth a bit. Anyway. And the third piece that's been missing was the course, showing people how to do it themselves and using video analysis. It's really simple with my remote fitting. And when you come in for a fit with me, I'm filming. A lot of it is I'm filming you and we're watching the film together and then we're making changes. So the course does that. It walks you through how to set up your cleats, how to set the ideal saddle height and fore aft, how to set up the aero bars, how to get comfortable, how to stay in a sustainable aerodynamic position. And then in the course, I also walk people through the things that we've just been discussing, hydration systems, front and rear, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because I see so many people come in, they've got a road bike, for example, they put some aero bars on, they put a saddle on, they've got a couple of hydration systems and nothing's working for them. They've spent $700-800, and unfortunately, we're going to have to get rid of that stuff and buy something that's fit for purpose. So I walk people through the minefield that is, the bike accessories, the hydration systems, the aero bars, the saddles, all that stuff that you're going to need through your triathlon journey. Yeah, I'm really proud of myself that I've got this thing up and running, and it's going to be a resource for people moving forward. So once you're in the course, you get lifetime access because new products are going to come on board. The new products are going to be released. I'm going to review products as they're released, right? I'm going to talk to vendors, and hopefully we'll have some discounts there for the people that are inside the course. It's helping people, as I said before, to get from where they are to where they want to be.
Well, honestly, I could keep talking to you for hours and hours. What I might do is get you to do a session for our Triathlon Nutrition Academy athletes in the future, if you're up for it, and just help them really specifically get their bike dialed in. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, find you, follow you, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so custombikefit.com is the website. Setup, SETUP, setup at custombikefit.com, or Michael at custombikefit.com. And then you find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all over the place.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. There were so many good tips and tricks in there for somebody to just get them more comfortable on their bike, and I guess make better purchasing decisions as well. If anyone is looking to upgrade, which we are all the time, right? N+1.
Absolutely. Yeah. Spending a little bit of money on the front end of your bike can turn your bike into a super bike. Now, bikes are very expensive at the moment and hard to get hold of. Another compelling reason to do the course, because there's some good product reviews in there, and some, at the moment, for the early bird adopters, some discounts as well.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and letting me pick your brain on all things bike fitting.
Awesome. Thank you, Darren. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Triathlon Nutrition Academy podcast. I would love to hear from you. If you have any questions or want to share with me what you've learnt, email me at podcast@dietitianapproved.com. You could also spread the word by leaving me a review and taking a screenshot of you listening to the show. Don't forget to tag me on social media at dietitian.approved so I can give you a shout out too. If you want to learn more about what we do, head to dietitianapproved.com. And if you want to learn more about the Triathlon Nutrition Academy program, head to dietitianapproved.com/academy. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to helping you smash it in the fourth leg. Nutrition!